Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, welcome back to the show, my good friend. Hope you had a good weekend. It's warmer outside.
Yeah.
The sun is shining. I've got a short sleeve shirt on.
Hello
down here in the basement.
Yeah.
We moved the clocks ahead, so things are starting to round the bend a little bit as we emerge from the tundra of the last couple months and hopefully now into some better weather. How are you?
Good. Coming fresh off of a dominant first grade basketball W yesterday, Ty. Everything is good. I'm under the impression that this is our episode 2 of DTF St. Louis, our recap episode. I don't know if you're current, Ty. I have no idea if it's a good show.
Is that a real show?
It's 100% a real show.
DTF St. Louis?
DTF St. Louis. It's on HBO,
Okay.
not a sponsor. Could be, but it would be a weird fit, especially to have Ty talk about it. It's a Jason Bateman, David Harbour, Linda Cardellini show about escapades gone wrong, Ty. I have no idea if it's any good, but I watched the first 2 episodes.
Are you pro Bateman?
Yeah, of course. I'm an Arrested Development human, so yeah. I don't watch all of his dramatic work. I've listened to some episodes of Smartless, but to me, Jason Bateman as a comedic straight man, just Hall of Fame because of Arrested Development.
I feel like it's a real source of tension in my marriage that I'm pro Bateman and Kate isn't.
She is neutral Bateman or anti-Bateman?
I think she's kind of anti-Bateman.
How does she feel about Rashad Bateman, pro-transition?
Not sure how she feels about former Minnesota wide receivers.
Yeah. High-quality receiver. Okay, so we won't do that episode today, our episode 2 recap of DTF St. Louis, but I guess we have time for just an enormous Q&A episode.
We do have time for an enormous Q&A, Dan Rubenstein.
Congratulations, Skippy. You've got mail.
You've got mail on the Solid Verbal.
As often as we can here in the off season, usually once a month or so, we put out a call on Verballers.com in this instance to the Verballerhood. We take your questions, we put them on air. This week we've got a big old 2-part Q&A episode where we do our best to pay homage to the kind Verballers who take it upon themselves to write in with questions. We've got a bunch here. As I said, this is part 1. Our next episode will be part 2. If you made it this far, if you like what you heard, let us know your thoughts on Jason Bateman. But before you do, hit follow or subscribe. Of course, Verballers.com is our Patreon. I did open this one up, actually. We got questions from some of our free members as well.
Oh, nice.
Necessarily have to pay if you don't want to. We get it. But we did have some submissions from the entirety of the Patreon Verballerhood.
Do you want to know the question I get the most IRL in real life about college football when people find out what I do?
Sure.
It goes like this. Man, that Indiana thing's crazy, huh? And scene. That's what I get. We didn't get any of those questions, but yeah, that's my check-in with real-life college football conversation. Yes, we got a ton of questions. Very excited to answer as many as we possibly can in an enormous Q&A episode. It's great.
Question number 1 from Chris. Will Kalen DeBoer still be the head coach at Alabama for their 2027 season opener, Dan Rubenstein?
I say yes, just because, okay, obviously there was some tumultuous feelings about Kalen DeBoer. I don't have his buyout figure in front of me. Obviously, SEC teams don't seem all too hesitant to pay a big number. Right. Here's my snapshot of Alabama before actually prepping for like our SEC preview, is they've got a pretty major quarterback battle between Keelan Russell and Austin Mack, I believe. They'll be starting a new left tackle. I think they're searching for new full-time inside linebackers. Yeah, there's just battles on this team. They have, I want to say Florida State once again. This time it's a return trip to Tuscaloosa for the Seminoles. And otherwise, their schedule is an SEC schedule. And
I'm sorry, what do we call that here on the show?
I'm not even trying to be jokey about gauntlet. It's going to be a high-quality schedule. I think that's fair to say.
It is, absolutely.
We don't fully know, and this will be sort of a theme of this episode if, people are asking us about teams or potential teams to do stuff this season. But there looks to be a lot of upside on this schedule. We'll see with like Vanderbilt on the road and what their quarterback situation looks like. If it's Jared Curtis, the true freshman who could be starting, and what he looks like 9-10 games into the season. They're at Tennessee, but in terms of their home road splits, they're not bad. But more to the point of the DeBoer issue, and I don't know if you feel the same way, I think it's going to be more of a manner thing than an actual, like, obviously the nuts and bolts results have to be there. They have to show improvement. But the manner in which Alabama closed out their season, I'm not even talking about a specific game against Indiana or Georgia. They just look different. And I don't know if it was the South Carolina thing that, they look strong against Tennessee, but South Carolina, they needed like 3 kind of rare occurrences to get away with a win in that game. What do they look like in the back half of the schedule? Like, are they built to be a very good team competing for a playoff spot throughout the season, not just the first 5-6 weeks of the season? Will they lay an egg like they did against Florida State to start the season last year? Like, I just think the view of Kalen DeBoer, Alabama after the 2026 season is, okay, we see the progress. We see that there's a certain bar for Alabama football. And we see, even if he is not hitting like, premium Saban level, we see the ascension and the competitive nature of this Alabama team, that they're in the playoff. The trajectory, right?
That SET word,
Right, totally. I just think there has to be a confidence that this is, it's shooting up and not just plateauing or up and down. Like, you just want to see, the arrow pointed in the right direction. And that direction has to be in the playoff and competing, or something catastrophic out of his control had to happen for Alabama not to be in the playoff, I think.
Yeah, I think the answer here is probably. But
yeah,
to the point of Chris's question, there is no doubt that year 3 for DeBoer is going to be a very pivotal year to determine where this thing does go in terms of trajectory. You all remember that contract extension talk we heard about back in December when the coaching carousel was spinning, and I believe DeBoer's name came up somewhat attached to Penn State or Michigan, maybe others. Where did those talks go?
Yeah.
Haven't heard hide nor hair of those.
Right.
Where did they go? And so I think it's notable to mention that those negotiations are still ongoing at last check.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that to mean that Alabama isn't quite sure either where things stand right now. I think Kalen DeBoer is one of the top 10 coaches in the country. I don't even think it's a debate. I also think his biggest problem is not what happens on the field with the run game. His biggest actual problem is that he's the guy who took over for Nick Saban. He's forever going to be a Nick Saban shadow.
Right.
So unless things completely go sideways, does it make sense to pay a guy who's a really good coach $60, $70 million to just go away and, in effect, put yourself back in the exact same situation where you're, again, trying to find the next Nick Saban or whoever?
Right.
Who would you even target at this point that is viewed as a clear upgrade?
I agree.
Over Kalen DeBoer. I don't know who that name is. I'm sure people can write in and give me their suggestions. I also realize I am making a very logical argument here, right. I believe anyway.
Yeah.
For keeping Kalen DeBoer. And this is college football where logic is sort of left at the door.
Right. And look, it's also more and more fair to judge Alabama and Kalen DeBoer in 2026 and beyond because he has turned over this roster. This is not Kalen DeBoer coaching dudes he didn't recruit, right? Between the portal and the last couple recruiting classes.
This is his thing now. This is his show.
Austin Mack was a high school recruit of Kalen DeBoer's at Washington. If he wins the job, Keelan Russell is fully developed by Kalen DeBoer, for better or for worse, as a college quarterback. And so he can't, with any sort of authority, say like, well, like they didn't recruit this position well, or this position was left out to dry. Like, this is his team. So
it's his show.
Whatever grace he was barely extended from Alabama for some of the results and some of the performances at the end of last year, he's just not going to have this year. So
he won't. There's the safety net to an extent, I think, is gone. But I will add this.
Yeah.
New quarterback. Mm-hmm. 11 new offensive linemen came in either via high school recruiting or the transfer portal. It is a front seven with some real questions. And, of course, you got the schedule, the gauntlet of the schedule. I think people will fixate on the running game, at least initially, as the thing. Because everyone knew after the year, that's the element of this offense that they need to come up with a fix for. The quarterback is, that's kind of baked into the cake at this point. We realize there's going to be a transition.
Yeah.
But if they can't run the ball with a bunch of new linemen, a new offensive line coach, an incoming 5-star running back in E.J. Crowell, who was the top running back this past cycle, if they can't fix that I think is going to get stuck in a lot of craws in the Deep South.
Sure.
So I'm going to watch that. I think everyone knows to watch for that. But there are definite reasons why this Alabama team still could fall short of the playoffs, not the least of which is some of those things that I just mentioned. I haven't done the full deep dive yet, but I have started looking at this team a little bit. Mm-hmm. And my lean right now is this is somewhere between 8-4 and 10-2.
Sure.
This year. So on paper, that's a top 15 team, I think, with a lot of upside, as you mentioned, but it's impossible to predict what's going to happen at quarterback, at running back, at linebacker, where they bring in some other blue chip talent. I just don't know. If I'm betting right now, I think we're talking 9-3. And I think we're talking about a Bama team that barely misses the playoff, but has a lot of obvious upside moving forward, being so there are going to be a bunch of underclassmen here. How they handle that internally is, in effect, the question that Chris is asking. But I think it's an interesting question to start pondering, not because I think they should actually get rid of DeBoer, but because I could see 9-3 and no playoff being a thing, but with obvious upside that could make the conversation a little bit more complicated.
Also, we are talking about an Alabama team that made the playoff after the 2025 season that maybe sort of kind of had a nudge in, right? That maybe there was a PR element to the final, 10 yards of the marathon of Alabama's season where they got that little Disney footstool and nudged. And if
Disney footstool.
Yeah. If they don't get that,
did you write that down, or was that just off the top of your head?
I don't know. Is a footstool a thing? Is that just like a tiny little? Gives you a tiny little boost to reach up something in the pantry? I don't know.
It sounded good.
Okay? I'm making sure this is a thing. Yeah.
There are footstools. Footstools are real.
Footstools are the little Ottoman type helper. But I'm just saying that's not happening every year or in every sort of simulation of the college football universe, and some of those Notre Dame is getting in. And so then we're talking about an Alabama team that has missed the playoff both years of the Kalen DeBoer era heading into 2026.
Right.
And so
obviously, not there, but
but we're not talking about an Alabama team that left no doubt about being a playoff team in 2026. So that's just, I don't know, an interesting lens through which to view
I agree.
The DeBoer era. So, that's where I'm at. That I think I think your word is correct. Probably, but not obviously. But that number
probably,
is just crazy.
But not obviously.
You have to, because essentially that, whatever it is, $50-60 million, I don't know what it goes down to. But if you're firing him and paying dozens of millions of dollars, you're essentially treating that as a right to hire the guy you're positive is better.
And who's that guy?
Who is that guy?
That's. I think that's the real operative question. By the way, did you see this thing about Ryan Williams?
No. What happened?
Ryan Williams has switched his number from 2 to number 1.
Okay.
He has also now changed his name.
Oh.
It is no longer just Ryan Williams. It is now Ryan Coleman Williams.
Okay. It would have been cooler if he did Brian Williams. Ryan Coleman Williams. Okay. RCW?
Ryan Coleman. RCW, yeah.
Okay. Noted.
I like it. It kind of rolls, actually.
Ryan Coleman Williams. Great.
Let's go to Tyler. Tyler writes in, he wants to know, is the new era of NIL making it easier for non-blue blood programs to land top-tier quarterback prospects by offering immediate playing time, Dan? So this is one of those questions. We get these style of questions often where we look at the landscape of college football, how it has drastically changed in a very short period of time. And I think only now are we starting to see the ramifications of that.
Right.
Some were obvious from the jump when the portal and NIL kind of came into existence at the same time. But some other elements of this, be it who's making the playoffs, be it, I think, some injection of parity that we have seen around college football, not full NFL parity, but definitely have seen a little bit more of it. all the way down through talent acquisition and how you construct a roster.
Right.
And this is one of those things that I know we have kept close attention on for a while now. What does it do to the quarterback market? We know what it does at the top of the quarterback market, guys like Brendan Sorsby getting paid. But what does it do for everyone else, both coming out of high school and or leaving their current program to go somewhere else? So his question is, again, does it make it easier, NIL, for non-blue blood programs to land top-tier quarterback prospects by offering immediate playing time?
So what would the examples be in your mind of how this has, like, I just mentioned Jared Curtis, who was committed to Georgia, decommitted, recommitted to Georgia, decommitted, committed to Vanderbilt. I think he's from Nashville. So that was not like a weird implication. I did have to clear my throat.
Okay.
From Nashville, and was able to step in because there's a vacancy at quarterback for the Doors. Obviously, Vanderbilt, not a blue blood successful program. So you're talking about maybe last year at Cal, JKS came in and had immediate playing time, right? And he ascended to being a blue chip quarterback who was sort of off of everybody's radars as a prospect, and then shot up, I want to say, after Elite 11. And even though he left Cal for Oregon briefly, he came back to Cal and started as a true freshman. So it's a case-by-case situation that, yes, I mean, one, you have to have the money, and it's easier to have money as a hugely successful program. Two, if you have a bunch of money to pay a quarterback, a lot of these schools are going to say, well, I'm just going to pay Brendan Sorsby instead of going after a 5-star out of high school and pay him a lot of money, because that's just closer to a surer thing. And so then if you're going to say, okay, I'm a Virginia, I'm a Pitt, I'm a Mississippi State, I'm a Illinois or whatever, I still think most of these places are still going to opt for the upside of a transfer who has shown upside playing college football, rather than say, I'm going to throw all my money at like the number 11 quarterback coming out of high school. I still think that's going to be the case, because that's what we've seen a lot of these schools do, right? TCU went after Jaden Craig from Harvard. Illinois went after, who's their new quarterback? Kattenhauser?
Yep.
So they're going after guys that they're like, okay, I know what he's like, and he's 20, so I feel like his floor is going to be so much higher, because this is also like a risk mitigation thing. So I still think we're going to see a lot of those high-level high school prospects go to the places that are more obviously capable of developing them into NFL guys, who also might recruit over them, which we've also seen.
Sure.
But I still don't think you're going to see mid-tier bowl level teams say, yeah, we're going to pay $1.8 million for the number, to bring in Faison Brandon to NC State, right? Also, I don't think a lot of those guys are going to want to go to places that don't have that track record of developing quarterbacks.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That is my point. And so my answer to Tyler's question is yes, but not the way he asked the question.
Right.
All right. It might be marginally easier to pluck a highly talented guy from high school now, because there's a money aspect to it and because you can't offer playing time.
Right.
It may be marginally easier. And we have seen a couple examples of that. You mentioned Jared Curtis. Keyshawn Henderson was the top player. He's local to Texas. He stayed in the Houston area. He's signed with Houston. Malik Washington, we saw a year ago, right? Highly touted guy in Maryland, stayed home with Maryland, started as a true freshman.
The Houston thing is not expected to be a quarterback battle with Connor Wigman this season. He'll play some, but it's not.
No, but I'm saying we have some examples of guys who want to stay close to home. Maybe there's a pull there, maybe the money, maybe the possibility of playing time.
Right.
In the short term or medium term, that type of thing can help for sure. I still think I'm with you. Most of the top guys want to go somewhere bigger where they can get a little bit more prestige, maybe get a little bit more dough. And it's less about the playing time initially. Where it's definitely easier is plucking somebody off of a depth chart.
Right.
And I use the Kenny Minchie example.
Totally.
For Notre Dame, right? Kenny Minchie was a 4-star, initially went to Nebraska as a transfer, undid that commitment and is now going to be the starting quarterback, presumably at Kentucky. That aspect of it is way easier for non-blue blood programs. And there are countless examples of that going on around college football. That happens every cycle. For all we know, we could see some blind transfers here after spring ball where it happens again. So I think the playing time thing is very real for guys who are transferring off of, let's say, a very crowded depth chart and into some situation where they can get immediate snaps. I don't know if it's fully reached the high school level yet because I still think those guys want to go somewhere big.
Also, there's a reason sometimes and in some cases why and I think blue blood definitionally, a word? Possibly. I think
probably
there's a reason why, and blue blood has come to mean like powers of this, like current powers of the sport, which is not the definition of blue blood, right? It's old money, old success. But if we're talking about the powers, the current, decade, 10, 15-year powers of the sport and the not as much a power, like we saw this similar thing happen with, or like something in this vein with Dylan Raiola in Nebraska. Nebraska, not a great recent history of developing quarterbacks. Dylan Raiola has a family connection, not a geographic connection, but a family connection to Nebraska, goes there to try and raise the floor, right? And say like, okay, we're going to take Nebraska and we're going to build something around me, which I think is an ambitious way of thinking. And I never try to blame anybody for taking a big swing, right? So Nebraska ponies up, he comes in, he's able to go to a place that in this millennia or whatever has not been a huge 5-star quarterback destination. And he goes there and he experiences, I'm positive some of it is his fault and I'm positive some of it is Nebraska's fault, but he experiences less than stellar wide receiver play, less than stellar offensive line play, up and down defenses carrying up their end of the bargain. And you sort of understand why perhaps somebody with his talent, and I don't know if he'll ever be a good college quarterback consistently, but you can understand why a quarterback that is regarded like he was might be hesitant to go to a school like that, where he's not surrounded by the highest track record of quarterback drafting, coaching, or development. That's barely English once again. I'm trying to be like kind of diplomatic.
You're on a run here, man. This is a generational run.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, that like there's just more work to do at a lot of those places, and you're not going to be able to develop as cleanly in a lot of those places. Like we saw with Dante Moore in UCLA, immediate playing time, deficiencies at UCLA. And then he goes to Oregon, sits out a year, and is developed more thoroughly and is given time to grow into a better quarterback. So, yes, in theory, which is what you said, but in practice, you have different challenges to deal with, I think.
Definitionally is a word.
Yes.
It's an adverb. It means by definition in a manner that relates to the definition of a term. I don't know what that definition of definitionally means, but it Gemini, at least, if you take it with a grain of salt. But the AI overview here on the Googles is telling me.
Like, is it so hard for you to go to Merriam-Webster? Is that so difficult for you?
No, I just type. I'm in the middle of a show, Dan.
Okay. Definitionally,
I'm already multitasking over here.
Meaning, okay. What's the word for definitionally but less fake sounding is the first item that comes up.
I see the Reddit. I see that
on Reddit. Yeah. It does. Merriam-Webster does say definitional and definitionally are words. So I feel good about that.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
For that wonderful question. I want to go to this question from Jeff.
I'm ready.
I love this question, Dan.
Okay.
I spent the entirety of my shower earlier today thinking about this question. Jeff wants to know if you could alter one thing in college football history since the year 2000, what would it be and why? One thing since the year of our Lord 2000.
I am making sure Michael Dyer's elbow goes through the turf. Selfishly, leaving no doubt, he's got the muddiest, grassiest elbow in all of, where was that, Arizona?
Yeah.
In all of the Glendale, whatever, University of Phoenix Stadium at the time. That's my one as an Oregon fan. My two as an Oregon fan is I'm somehow giving Dennis Dixon extra ACL strengthening in August before the 2007 season, I don't know if that would actually help. My medical knowledge is quite limited, as you can probably.
Can they do that?
I don't know, Ty.
Do they have that technology?
I don't know how you can strengthen a ligament, but I'm sure you can. You can, do load and eccentric training or something like that, and that'll help out. Otherwise, as a sport, something that I think would have improved college football if I could go change any one thing, an easy answer would be like not letting the Longhorn Network happen, because that is one of the things and one of the reasons why we have had so much realignment. I kind of think it's inevitable when you get so much money involved in a sport that certain players and programs, and players, by players I mean programs and people with stakes here, are going to want more of it than others that they think that they've earned, and others haven't. So
sure.
I kind of think realignment, because we've always had realignment in the sport. We've always had independents like Penn State, join a conference. We've always had, even before the Longhorn Network, like the Big East was up and down in football. Like we've just had a lot of change. Florida State joining the ACC. The realignment didn't start at 2009 or whatever. So that would have been the easy thing to say, but I think we still would have gotten, the Texas schools and the Oklahoma schools then going to the Pac-10, 12.
Well,
that might have been I'm afraid
that if you keep going, you're going to steal my thunder with this.
Sorry. That would have been, from a pure entertainment standpoint, that shifts a lot of the weight of the sport westward, which, just given where I'm from and where my interests in history with the sport lie, that might be my answer. But
right,
that realigns the sport similarly, just in terms of scope, but just in a different way. So I think the personal one is Michael Dyer's muddy grassy elbow, and then the big picture one. There's always what ifs with recruiting, and this coach accepted this job, but then last second, decided not to, and Rich Rod and Bama and all, there's stories like that all over the place. I'm going to say those 4 schools moving westward, just because that would be a fun exercise to see where the sport would have, what the SEC would have done in terms of growing itself, what the Big Ten would have done in terms of an answer. That's probably just out of curiosity my what if.
Do you remember all of the just hype? I don't know what the right word is. I can't even put it into words. I remember being at the mysterious day job, reading at the time anybody who posted about conference realignment. And I remember East Coast Elliott at the time, long timer on the show, East Coast Elliott, sending links around then via our corporate email addresses to, remember Frank the Tank talking about conference realignment. I remember how this kind of captured the imagination. And then it went away.
Mm-hmm.
It went away. I believe that was in 2010. It just sort of went away. It didn't materialize. Obviously, Texas, Oklahoma end up now in the SEC. I remember those days. I don't think of them necessarily in a positive light, but I just remember it being the biggest conversation point back in the early days of our show, and just as a college football fan looking to kill time on the internet during work hours.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very big deal. My answer, and I was worried you were going to go here with it.
Yeah. If I had won America's Next Great Sports Writer in 2006?
No.
Okay.
We know you didn't. We know that
I was an honorable mention, Ty. Continue.
It's okay. I mean, listen, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
I have Larry Scott being named the Pac-12 commissioner circa 2009.
Okay. It's a pretty good answer. I like that.
Because you'll remember, initially he got high praise because he landed a TV contract. But then after that, it was sort of a masterclass in mismanagement. And I believe he kind of enriched himself with maybe the highest conference commissioner salary, something in the neighborhood of $5 million.
Yeah.
In addition to launching the Pac-12 network, which didn't really work. Good programming, didn't really work, financially speaking. Moved the entire conference to very expensive office space in San Francisco, bleeding the conference of money, despite the fact that there was going to be this looming threat of what was to come next. And so Larry Scott is the commissioner for 12 years? They eventually force him out in 2021, and that's when they turn it over to George Kliavkoff, who I believe I just pronounced his last name correctly for the first time ever.
I think you did great.
Despite the fact that we've been talking about this guy on and off for the last couple of years. He was put in a no-win situation. A, to try and clean up Larry Scott's mess, and B, to try and land some sort of media rights deal that would keep the conference together. And this is the other aspect of this that I need to mention. Because you may recall, at least as the story goes, via public reporting, there was an offer from ESPN in the neighborhood of $30 million per school that would have kept the Pac-12 together, would have extended media rights,
right?
And perhaps we're not in this situation we're in now where the conference dissolved. It is now being rebuilt in a much different image.
A Big 12-ish number.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then I believe it was the president of Utah via a professor that he worked with who I've never actually seen named anywhere.
Yeah.
But an unnamed professor took a $50 million figure to the president of Utah, who worked that one back up the chain. It was believed at the time that George Kliavkoff was going to take that number, give it to ESPN, and use it as something of a bargaining chip, hopefully to meet in the middle, maybe get to a $40 million number.
Right.
At which point it would have been, hey, we're all good. Let's sign the deal. Let's move on with our lives. Pac-12 lives.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe not. But instead...
Well, because look, you had Colorado looking already.
You had people looking, but here's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Instead, it is widely believed that there was some sort of miscommunication.
And by the way, USC and UCLA were gone anyway. So it's not even the Pac-12. I mean, it's called the Pac-12. So you're dealing with 10 teams and maybe like adding Boise and San Diego State or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it was intended to be used as more of a bargaining chip. Instead, it was, however it was conveyed, it was communicated more as like a take it or leave it type of situation. And ESPN left it.
Yeah.
And that put us, among other things, it wasn't just solely this, but among other things, that weird comedy of errors put us in the situation we're in now, where to many people, college football is unrecognizable.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could undo one thing, even though I am not from the West Coast, even though I do not have any West Coast rooting interests, that is the one thing that people like to email in about time and again as the moment where college football felt very different to them. It's not NAL.
Right.
It's not the transfer portal. And those things in their own right have made college football feel very different than it was when we were growing up. But this thing here, the Pac-12 going the way of the dinosaur, that was the thing that really put a lot of people off. So if I can undo one thing, let's get rid of Larry Scott. Let's get rid of that whole fiasco. And hopefully the Pac-12 is still intact.
Yeah, I think the Larry Scott thing is probably bigger. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors here, that just USC and UCLA and the gravity of the LA schools, not necessarily, especially UCLA, holding up their end of the bargain in terms of being some sort of a consistent national conversation team. USC being not losing their spot as a power in the sport. So the gravity was not as heavy moving towards the West Coast. Washington had a couple terrific years. Oregon obviously has been strong, but USC not holding up their end of the bargain. And then so if you get to a Pac-10 situation with USC and UCLA already leaving because it's assured that they're going to make a lot more money as a Big Ten team than they are as a West Coast.
And UCLA
Pac-10,
needs that money.
Team.
They need the money.
They both do. It was USC leading the way. I don't think Dan Lanning's at Oregon anymore. No. I think Dan Lanning's at Oregon and has stayed at Oregon because Oregon is playing in a much bigger conference than what that Pac-10 would have looked like. I don't think he's as vocal about not wanting to leave Oregon ever. I think he's, the head coach at Alabama or something. Not to say that he's not a loyal dude and not a good dude as it relates to his loyalty to Oregon, but he has said in the past that this is a big deal for Oregon with the ability to play those much bigger games nationally, right? To play in Michigan Stadium, to play in the Shoe, to play in a whiteout at Beaver Stadium. It's just a different level. As much as I like to be romantic about playing in Martin Stadium or playing at Sun Devil Stadium, it's a different level, and that elevates Oregon's place in the sport to play in the Big Ten. And so I don't know if Oregon's looking to leave a Pac-10, but a school like Oregon, Washington having been to the playoff a couple times, I don't think they're satisfied with a less than stellar deal when they have proven themselves on the national level.
Yeah, and look, as you said, I did a quick speed run
Sure.
of the history of the Pac-12, the demise of the Pac-12. There's obviously a lot more to it, but that's history as I remember it. And as it has been told and retold to us many times over by people who email in saying that the sport feels different to them. I would change that to answer the question.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's go to this question from Daniel. Will TV networks eventually stop Power 4 teams from canceling marquee matchups with other Power 4 teams, Dan?
It's a good question. I mean, I think conferences and TV networks are kind of scared to admit who holds the power in that much of a direct way. That like a conference would be like, well, we're playing this game because, you know, Disney or News Corp or Fox or ABC, whatever, told us that, you know, we have to play these kinds of games. Like they don't want to fully give up the game like that. I don't think publicly.
Right.
Stop Power 4 teams from canceling those matchups. I don't think so. I think they will just incentivize them to play them, whether it's a money thing, whether it's a, you know, playing on a specific stage or whatever it is. I think they'll incentivize them. And it's also, they will, the conferences, the TV networks, whatever, will incentivize, you know, whoever's deciding what the playoff is going to be to expand the playoff to the point where these schools will not want to cancel them because you can, everybody from the SEC or Big Ten will always get in at 9-3.
That's the answer.
So I think,
I don't think they're going to be able to stop them
from canceling.
But I don't think they'll be able to stop them from canceling. I think they're going to expand the playoff,
right,
so that it doesn't matter as much if you schedule, you know, a game against Ohio State in week 4. A loss isn't going to hurt you because the playoff field has like 22 teams in it, whatever that number is going to end up being. I'm not saying I'm arguing for that. I'm not. But I think that's probably where the conversation heads next. Obviously, if you're a TV network, you want to put the most marquee matchups on every week. And, you know, we had that conversation with Scott Docterman from The Athletic, who, like, go back to the beginning of last season, read his report on how the networks figure out when games are played and who's got which games on which networks. I mean, that aspect of things is something that I think you and I want to focus on here in the offseason because we're very interested in how all of that comes to fruition. So that's definitely an area of interest for us.
Yeah.
And certainly an area of interest when it comes to things like this. Big marquee matchups. How do they get on TV to begin with? There is clearly always going to be an appetite to have more games like that. And so the only way that you can continue scheduling them without penalizing teams further if they take a loss is what they did last year, which is try to de-emphasize the value of a loss in a marquee game when it comes down to who gets into the playoff and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, expand the playoffs so maybe it doesn't matter as much at all. I think that's where it's headed.
I think, well, the other thing too is, and again, this isn't for the TV networks to do per se, but since everybody's sort of in cahoots, in my opinion, it's
Conspiracy Dan.
Of course, here's my tinfoil hat. No, this isn't really a conspiracy thing. Is will we get to the point where schools like Indiana and Texas Tech have their non-conference schedules magnified and get punished if they're not winning a conference and they're an at-large team, that an 11-1 team with Indiana's non-conference or Texas Tech's non-conference is suddenly below a 10-2 or 9-3 team who scheduled Michigan or Oklahoma or Texas or Ohio State or Texas A&M or Arizona State, take your pick, of like a strong Power 4 school rather than Old Dominion or Southern or Abilene Christian, any of those types of schools, which you'll see on some of those schedules. Will we get to the point where you are punished for, and look, this is all a product of when Indiana's AD booked this schedule, they were saying, how do we schedule to get to 7-5? When Texas Tech's AD was like, how do we get to 8 wins? That would be super cool if we got to 8 wins. Let's schedule 3 wins in September. They didn't necessarily anticipate these schools hiring and spending their way to, and portaling and everything that has gone into the success of schools like this, which, by the way, those teams were excellent this past year, regardless of who they played. But it's a seeding thing. It's okay, you're 10-2 and they're 10-2. They scheduled really good really well in September. You didn't, so that's the tiebreaker. And we've seen certain situations throughout the history of college football. In the BCS era, when Auburn was left out, you go back and look at their non-conference versus like USC's non-conference that year. Like, we've seen teams punished when it's on the margins pretty similar. If we're expanding the playoff, it's ultimately not going to matter. And the other point of this too, I would say, and I just want to make sure this is known, I think these huge schools love these matchups. Like, I think they want to play these games. They just don't want to be punished for playing these games per se, or, claiming they're being punished for playing these games when you lose other winnable games. They love getting the attention of playing against a high-profile opponent. They love the ability to say, we're Texas, so of course we're playing in this kind of game. We're Notre Dame. We're LSU. We're Wisconsin, whatever. They love playing on stages like this because it's great for the school to receive that kind of attention on CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, whatever. It's great for the school. It's great for recruiting. It's great for exposure. It's great to reinforce your perceived brand value. Like, these are great spots for these places.
Hey, or in some cases, the credibility of the conference. And I had John Kurtz on the show a couple weeks ago, and one of his talking points on his channel, Open for Business, is how the BYU Notre Dame game coming up this year is perhaps the biggest game in the entire Big 12 schedule.
Yes, totally.
And his point, I think, is something you're speaking to, which is the notoriety that a conference, that a team gets from playing a big matchup. It shouldn't be undervalued, right? If BYU were to win that game, clearly it gives their playoff case a big boost. Clearly it gives the conference a bit of a boost as well. Just being in a matchup like that against a team that I think we would agree Notre Dame is a contender going into the 2026 season. If nothing more, a game featuring Notre Dame is always going to draw ratings. Having those games on your schedule, that's not necessarily a net loss. Even if you lose, if you acquit yourself well, it still stands for something, and it should stand for something in this era of college football. So I am with you. I obviously would like to see more matchups like this. I am with the coaches who would like to play in more matchups like this to give themselves, if nothing more, a pretty good smoke test to see how the team acquits itself against better competition. I hope it doesn't get to a point where we see more of these matchups falling by the wayside because it doesn't help the playoff case. But if there are things that can be done short of expanding the playoff to make sure that we still get them, I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, the only thing I would sort of shift around, and we did get a question, and maybe this is a part B of the question here about, like, could the Big 12, is there a world in which the Big 12 gets two bids to the playoff? Obviously the answer is yes.
Right.
But that world, I think, is based around the point you're making and the reason why that game is so huge. And I do think it's tough to say, like, oh, if BYU acquits itself well again, like, that's sort of almost too subjective. BYU should receive points and should receive credit for scheduling Notre Dame and, doing a home and home thing with Notre Dame. And yes, but you got to win the game. If you're looking for that bid, like, yes, you can get points for scheduling that game, but that's just a harder way. That's just harder to quantify that. Like, let's give BYU credit, but how much credit? They didn't win the game, but they looked pretty good in that game. Like, BYU needs to beat Notre Dame in order for BYU to probably find themselves in the playoff, not winning the Big 12. Like, they're going to need something like that because what we've seen from the committee recently, and every year it's a different, it's a different Big 12, and we should appraise the Big 12 as a whole differently every year based on what they look like. But if recent history serves, then they're probably not going to get too many benefits of the doubt after the first two or three teams.
Well, so let me.
There's one other game. There's one other game. Continue.
What's the other game for you?
ASU is traveling to Texas A&M this year.
Oh yeah,
so
that's a big one.
If you are ASU in 10-2, or if you are BYU in 10-2, and we're suddenly measuring you against Oregon or USC or Iowa, or take your pick of a team who is in that at-large conversation, and ASU has not only scheduled really well, but they beat, and I don't know where Texas A&M is going to end up in the preseason top 25, but they're generally considered top 10-ish at the moment. To go to Kyle Field and win, it's a huge, huge deal. So ASU would be in that, okay, they're in the Big 12, but they went to Texas A&M and won. They're in the Big 12, but they beat Notre Dame, right? That suddenly gives you a resume that becomes all the more impressive.
Well, let's hit the part B right now from Eric.
Okay.
Eric says, should Utah fans be worried about the program's direction after Kyle Whittingham's departure? And can the Big 12 ever get 2 playoff bids? So 2 separate questions.
Right. But related.
We can start with the Big 12 and the 2-bid conference thing.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's fascinating. That is a fascinating point of discussion. I think of it from a slightly different standpoint than I believe he is asking here.
Yeah.
I think of it in terms of it being a math problem. Because the math is very simple. If Notre Dame gets in the top 12 per these new rules, they're getting into the playoff. That's one team.
Yep.
There's going to be one G5 team getting in at a minimum. I would presume in most years it's going to be just one, but that's 2.
In the 12-team era, which
in the
we don't know how
era,
much longer it's going to last. Yeah.
Important disclaimer. Yeah. Thank you. ACC Big 12 champions, they each get a spot in. That's 4. That leaves you 8 spots. And you need to pick off one if you want to get a 2-team, 2-bid situation going in the college football playoff for the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
The most informed thing that I can tell you at this juncture, Eric, is that it's a wide open league.
Yep.
I've always loved the Big 12. I have started researching the Big 12. I have not fully done previews or anything like that. It's still early March. But the Big 12 is wide open, and I think there are plenty of teams in the conference that could make the case that they could, if things break in their direction, grab one of those 8 spots and keep it for themselves.
Sure.
My bigger question, though, and this is why I bring this up, I kind of have a sub-question for you. As I was thinking about this, the thought crossed my mind, hey, why does the Big 12 want to play a conference championship game at all?
Fair.
What's the point of that? Because if you think of that math problem, in those terms, if you got 8 spots left,
yeah,
why not use the tiebreaker in your 16-team conference to declare a league champ or declare co-champs and make it interesting for the committee? Like, why risk giving one of your top 2 teams another loss? Even if the committee says, it doesn't matter, we don't penalize it. We know they kind of do. Not in all cases, but in some cases they do. Why give them the benefit of another Big 12 loss to try and keep these teams out? Why not just stop it?
Sure.
Declare a champ or co-champs, and then let the rest figure itself out via the committee or whatever process they claim to use.
Well, in that situation, okay, so the Big 12 and the ACC are trying to do everything they can, 1, for themselves, and 2, to make sure the SEC and the Big 10 are cool with them, right?
Right.
They're not trying to ruffle any feathers. So if the SEC and Big 10 are still going to play a conference championship game, then the Big 12 is going to be like, we're going to make things easier for our teams while it's more difficult for your teams, right? And we're going to eliminate that extra game. 2, I think they have a deal in place financially to play this game.
I understand that there's a deal, but I'm saying hypothetically, I
hear you. Well,
what's the upside?
We're also,
other than to try and keep up with the Joneses, what is the practical upside to playing this game? If one of your teams loses, they might hold it against them.
Sure.
It's another week to beat up your best teams. You're guaranteed 1 spot per these new rules. Whoever wins the conference gets in. So why not just say this is who we are electing as our conference champion, and you guys can figure out the rest.
They're not in charge. It's whatever the Big 10 and SEC tell them the competitive structure of the sport is going to be. That's where the Big 12 is at the moment, and they're doing their best to maximize who they are. Also, with regard to the 2-bid thing, it's not fair. It's not right. But the taste left in everybody's mouth with the Big 12 is our champion who murdered everybody, including the second best team in the clear second best team in the conference, who was definitely of playoff caliber in BYU. Texas Tech had nothing to prove against BYU, to your point, in the conference championship game this year. It won't always be the case. They had nothing to prove and went out and trounced them again. And so then the champion that trounced the second best team twice went to the college football playoff as a top 5 seed and scored how many points in the playoff?
I believe a big old goose.
It'd be 0 points. And perception becomes reality when you're measuring teams against each other, when you have a limited sample size. I'm not saying the Big 12 doesn't have enough quality to send 2 teams to the college football playoff, but that is the lasting impression of the current Big 12. The year before that, Arizona State acquitted itself very well against Texas. It changes year to year, but that's where we are right now with the Big 12 as constituted. That this version of Texas Tech, that was a machine in this conference, scored 0 points on a neutral field against the whatever 3rd or 4th place team in the Big 10. And so they're going to have to prove it with games like ASU against Texas A&M, with BYU against Notre Dame. Every year, it's a clean slate, and they have a chance to prove themselves as being a better conference than they were the previous season. But yes, that is the current impression of the current Big 12 at the top right now.
I guess in sort of a weird way.
And maybe that's not fair, to be clear, but that's what it is right now.
Yeah. I guess in sort of a weird way, I'm quasi-arguing for some of the concepts that I know have been presented with how maybe the SEC and the Big Ten want to restructure conference championship week.
Sure.
Where, yes, there might be a conference championship game, but then there are also other games that are being played to try and boost the profile of some teams that could be in the playoff conversation. I'm taking a different approach, but I'm just wondering out loud why we need that at all if it could stand to hurt the Big 12.
Oh, I think it stands to hurt everybody at this point, especially with Notre Dame having the sweetheart deal that they have, not playing in a conference championship game. You're going to see a lot of why am I playing if Notre Dame's not playing?
I know. I listen, I'm a
deal,
Notre Dame fan. I get it.
Yeah. So I just think we're going to go to more games. Eventually, the conference championship games are going to become the idea of conference semifinal weekend or whatever,
right.
6 versus 3 and 4 versus 5 to see who gets at large. But we're going to go to that point eventually because, the powers that be in college football want nothing more than to be NFL light for some reason. And that's where we're going to go. So we're heading in that direction. The toothpaste is out of the tube, the genie's out of the bottle, all that kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, I from the Big 12's perspective, you're just doing what, the other those big 2 conferences are telling you what the governance of the sport is going to be, or the competitive structure.
The first part of Eric's question was about Utah. Should Utah fans be worried about the direction after Kyle Whittingham's departure? I think it's too early to say.
I don't. I have a fully formed official opinion. No, of course it's too early to say. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Were we not already concerned about the trajectory of Utah before Whittingham left?
Were we?
Well, I don't think we were concerned about Utah as being a consistent performer. But in terms of what will it take to get Utah to the next level, there were real conversations we had on this show. I know we had on other shows where it was an open conversation about all right, we know Whittingham's a good coach. We generally know what style of football he likes to play. But there is this lingering question of what is it going to take to get to the next level? And it came to a point, obviously, within Utah where they were pretty determined to flip it over to Morgan Scalley as the coach and wait. They didn't want to lose him, and they wanted to go in a different direction. So my sense is they were feeling a little bit of it too, that it was time to change the guard and see if maybe they could shake things up. I think we need to give it a minute before we jump to any conclusions on what Morgan Scalley is going to do. I think there is enough left on the roster that it'll be in decent enough shape going into this year. But there's obviously a pretty big transition underway as well as he changes things over and rebuilds in his image. So I think it's too early to say. I understand the question, but I also think that at least from my standpoint and, some of the conversations we've had here, I think some of those concerns were out there already. So it's not really that different in my eyes.
Yeah. The only, quibble I'll have is I don't think anybody was concerned about the future of Utah football with Kyle Whittingham. And I know they had a crazy amount of injuries and whatever. He'd been there for 20 years. They won 1 million games. They won 11 games last year. They were arguably a playoff team in the way that they performed. They went from just a complete disaster of offensive football when nicked up and the backup quarterbacks weren't there, and just like they were a limited offensive team, even producing tight ends and running backs, to having a top 7 offense in America last year.
It was a different question with Whittingham than I think it's going to be now with Morgan Scalley. To Eric's question here, the question with Whittingham is he ever going to find a way to find another gear and take this program to the next level? That was the concern under Whittingham. The concern now, to Eric's question, is, hey, are they going to bottom out?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to bottom out.
program on level footing now, stable footing? I think they're fine. I think they'll be fine. And I do like Morgan Scalley a lot, but there's a transition. So I understand why he's asking the question. It's just, I think, way too early to say.
I would say there are probably 130 fan bases worried about their program's direction under their current coach.
Always.
So, you should give him an opportunity before feeling anything. You shouldn't have any emotions unless there is some sort of reason, right? That, oh, okay, Whittingham left and 59 players left as well. No, the word is nobody likes Morgan Scalley. That didn't happen. Big players left, big recruits left, whatever, but nothing crazy dramatic. You got to give him an opportunity. The quarterback is back. The quarterbacks are back. I'm a big Bird Ficklin guy. Big Bird Ficklin guy.
Ficklin, baby.
There's a lot to still very much like about Utah, but you should be worried because Utah is one of, 3 programs in America. I mean, how many coaches have been around for as long as Witt was around in Salt Lake City? Like, just Kirk Ferentz? Like, you got to count it. It's on one hand. And so Utah football and Kyle Whittingham are one and the same in terms of how we appreciate what this program has done this century. So, yes, you should be worried just because that kind of transition can be very, very difficult. But because he's been there for so long, you should be less worried. But everybody should be worried. I'm worried as an Oregon fan about elements of this program. I'm sure you're worried about Notre Dame and Penn State and all these successful programs.
I'm worried every minute of every day about Marcus Freeman taking another job. So.
Sure. Well, there's that. And then they're like, are you worried about like Penn State winning too many games playing against a bunch of high school teams in their non-conference this season and last season, right? That's tough. So everybody's worried. You should be worried, but just because he's new as a head coach.
Final question here from another Tyler.
Yes.
Probably a better Tyler. What are your top 3 elements that make a great tailgate experience?
Oh, great question.
He says, for example, weather, venue, music, food, drinks, games, etc., TVs. You were formerly the SI tour guy.
Yeah, so if we were to draft...
This was your job for a moment in time, going around the tailgates, talking to tailgaters. I know you have far more opinionated thoughts on this than I do. So where are you at?
Well, what's your number 1 draft pick? For if we had an element draft, I'll give you the number... Weather's number 1. Weather is number 1.
Weather's number 1.
Because nothing else matters. The seating, the bathroom availability, the food, the TV setup, whatever. Nothing matters if it's miserable out and you don't you're not prepared for it. You're just like, oh, it was supposed to be 58 and it's 31 and hailing. Like there's not much you can do to have a good time.
If it is 72 and sunny, the tailgate can consist of sitting in a field on a blanket, passing around a bag of Lay's potato chips, not a sponsor could.
Yeah.
And that's great.
It's great.
Okay. So the weather
I thought you were going to say something else,
passing
around. Just passing around a fat blunt in the middle of a field in Como. Well,
whatever you're into. Like I don't judge, but I'm just saying that weather for me is number 1.
Yeah, I don't care about music. I mean, music's fine. I don't care about music with a tailgate necessarily. Games are fine. Those are all bonus. Those are all luxuries. If I have weather, if I have seating, and I have food.
Okay.
TV is a luxury. I love, not everybody needs to watch an ACC game early or a, Mountain West game or not everybody needs that. And I understand that. I need it. But in terms of the roots, in terms of the most important parts of my tailgating day, weather, seating, food, very close. And usually all these big programs have porta potties everywhere. That's not a small deal. I don't know. If you're around a bunch of people, cornhole's a bonus. All that stuff is a bonus stuff. Ladders, that's great. Having a football to throw around, it's great. Weather, food, seating.
Let me ask you a question,
please.
Live music.
It's fine. I mean, I appreciate when like 15 members of the marching band kind of make their way through. It's like, hey, that's kind of cool.
Like the trumpets or something.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's cool.
That's cool. That plugs in very naturally to the whole
Have a couple
experience.
snares and some brass. Great.
But what about somebody's cousin Brian,
Yeah.
who happens to be very deep with his acoustic guitar
Don't need it.
and decides he's just going to go out there and put a set together for
I've
the
seen
people.
karaoke setups where like this was
I've
at
seen
Penn
that.
State.
Yeah,
I
I've seen
don't
that.
remember if this might have been somebody at a tailgate where you knew people, but I don't think you knew this guy.
No, I didn't know that guy. I don't know who that. I don't know what his deal
They
was.
started
but-
playing Neil Diamond, and he had a microphone to sing along to Neil Diamond on their speakers and was trying to engage people who walked by. Look, I respect the hustle. It's nothing I need, but I guess that's Penn State for you.
Settle.
I'm trying to think. No, that wasn't an install at Penn State. Yeah, the live music thing, because now you have the activation stuff where it's like, oh, guess what? Like Coke Zero has a concert series, and
Not a
Rob
not a
Thomas is
sponsor.
playing.
Could be a Rob Thomas. Could be a sponsor.
I'm not crazy. I'm just that's fine, but I'm not. There are very few artists. We're like, Rob Thomas is about to play at the Coke Zero stage. We're like, okay, I have a comfortable seat. I've got a couple brats. Via con Dios. I hope everybody else enjoys it. I'm good. And all due respect to Rob Thomas, obviously. He's carved out quite a career
Rob
for
Thomas
himself.
is probably listening to this, I can only imagine.
Oh, I was just trying to think
Wondering,
of
how
somebody.
am I getting dragged into this?
Somebody who, if there is like that sponsored activation, they have a budget to bring in somebody before. You always see that, right? You see a few seconds of it before the Orange Bowl or something. And there's just somebody where it's just like, hey, and before we get to kickoff, here were some scenes from the the whatever stage, and it's Lifehouse. Rocking the whatever insurance stage. Rocking the Baja Blast Orange Bowl stage.
It's always best when they introduce Lifehouse with like multi-platinum award-winning
Of course.
Lifehouse with their hit single ...
Hanging by a Moment, by the way, to be clear. I have not forgotten the name of their hit single. But yes, it is somebody who likely peaked a while ago.
Who needs the money?
You meet that
could
middle
use the
point where you're
paycheck.
like, would you accept $3,500 and expenses? Like, sure. We'll give you 15 seconds on ABC. Great. But yeah, it's somebody, and listen, I don't begrudge any in this economy. Take what you can get, Ty.
Take what you
can get. So yes, it's a bonus. It's nice if you happen. Look, if Ty was wandering over because he had to use the porta-john after eating too many brats, and he was wandering back to his home tailgate, and there was, again, take your pick, Rob Thomas, Lifehouse. They probably shouldn't be lumped together, and they're on the Baja Blast stage.
Yeah,
Ty will give him 7 minutes of his life. Of course he will.
I mean, I probably would go see Rob Thomas. I'm of that age.
Like you'd
I
buy
wouldn't be-
tickets
No. I'm saying if he were on the Baja Blast stage,
if Rob Thomas is appearing, right?
I'd go watch Unwell.
Okay.
I mean, I'd check that out.
Is there a known artist where you'd be like, you know what? I don't have time for them.
Oh.
If it were
probably
JoJo.
more. Who?
JoJo.
JoJo?
Yeah, Get Out.
Is she still
Leave.
singing?
I don't know.
I mean, that was a jam. I did like that.
I'm saying, but like, is there somebody you're like, you know what? I don't have time for Our Lady
No.
Peace.
If I were Lady Peace. I saw Our Lady Peace.
I'm
in
sure.
concert.
I would, by the way, I would stop to see any of these acts.
I wouldn't stop to see JoJo.
If you found out, hold on.
If I was at a great tailgate and my friends were like, "Come on, you want to go up to the so-and-so stage to see JoJo?"
Well, it's like an 11-minute concert.
Pass the buffalo cheese dip, please.
You choose buffalo cheese dip over JoJo?
I think so.
What about Silverchair?
I'd have to go see Silverchair.
Silverchair over JoJo. What if Ashley Simpson made a comeback to the college football universe?
We'd give that a pull.
Okay. What about Jason Derulo?
I would have to.
Of course.
I would have to.
I
told you about my Jason Derulo playlist, right?
I don't think so.
I put a Jason Derulo playlist together. I think I talked about it on the show like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I put a Derulo playlist together somewhere. I can find it. All the Jason Derulo songs in which he starts out the song saying, Jason Derulo.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I have a lot of respect for Jason Derulo and the call-outs.
All right, Left Turn.
Hold on, I want to ask you more acts.
Oh.
I would see all of them, but like...
Okay.
Here are the 2004 Billboard top singles, okay?
Okay.
I don't know why I chose 2004, a good 22 years ago. Would you see Hoobastank? I would.
I would see Hoobastank.
You would stop your walk.
Hold on, what is the scenario here? I'm at a tailgate, I'm enjoying myself, the weather is beautiful.
Yeah.
But then, in addition, we find out there is some sort of sponsored activation featuring an artist that we know.
On the Baja Blast stage.
On the Baja Blast. Am I leaving the tailgate to go and see that artist is your question.
So the first level is I would stop my walk back from the Porta-John to like, okay, it's starting in 6 minutes. I will wait here, and then I will watch the 10-minute set of their three biggest songs. Okay. Or one of your like many honeys comes by your tailgate and is like, hey, just saw that Hoobastank is playing in 10 minutes if anybody wants to go over with me.
Okay.
So you have to make an effort for the second level.
Okay.
So Hoobastank, yes or no?
Yeah, that's an auto yes.
3 Doors Down.
I believe so. Did I see that the lead singer just passed away?
Oh, that I don't know that.
I'm wrong about that, but old school 3 Doors Down.
I have not kept track of Christina Milian.
I have no idea who that is.
Really? She was also an actress. May still be an actress.
She could walk in the studio. I wouldn't know who that is.
Okay. Dido. 100% yes, of course. I'll go out of my way. You wouldn't go see White Flag sung to you?
Nah. No, I'm good.
Khalees. Milkshake.
Don't know who that is.
My Milkshake brings all the boys to you.
Not.
You wouldn't go?
No.
You wouldn't even stop on the way back from the bathroom to see Khalees?
Didn't like that song.
Oh, you were out of your mind.
No.
That's such a bad answer, Ty. Switchfoot.
You know what? I would go, but I'm not a Switchfoot fan.
We were meant to live.
Not really that into him, but I would go because it's Switchfoot.
Amon. The F it, I don't want you back.
No, I have no idea who that
Finger
is.
11.
No.
They
have that one song. What was the song? Paralyzer or something?
This year it was One Thing.
Oh, one. No, I'll stay at the tailgate.
I have an answer for you that it's such a clear delineation of Porta-John, yes, leave the tailgate, no. This is my delineation. Okay. I would absolutely stop to watch on the way back from the Porta-John. Would not leave my seat and, brats.
Okay.
Ryan Cabrera. I would stop for Ryan Cabrera. I would not leave for Ryan Cabrera. Because then I would have to announce to the tailgate, hey, everybody, who wants to go see Ryan Cabrera? All due respect to Ryan Cabrera.
I wouldn't. I don't think I would do either.
I would stop. I'd be like, all right, I have 4 minutes for Ryan Cabrera. Absolutely, yes. 5 for fighting?
I would stop just for Superman.
I would stop. I don't think I would leave for
I
5
would, I wouldn't leave, but I would stop on the way back if it's like in between point A and B. Yeah.
What about
for Superman?
Los Lonely Boys?
No.
100% go see Los Lonely Boys. 100%. I
How
might
far is
pay
heaven?
in 2026 to go see a Los Lonely Boys concert. They just seem fun.
Well, no one is. That's probably part of the issue for Los Lonely Boys.
Right.
But.
Well, I don't know. I don't know their touring schedule and venue possibilities.
I don't know.
Evanescence. That's a tough tail. They need a certain vibe, and I don't know if a tailgate is matching.
I mean, that's rough at like a beautiful, like in the shadow of a college football stadium. Evanescence playing some of their beat. No, I would probably stop on the way back, but I don't think I would leave the tailgate for that.
Last one, Juvenile.
No.
I would knock over old people to go see Juvenile. I would run through them like it was Black Friday to go see Juvenile at a tailgate. 100%.
Los Lonely Boys, by the way, are playing in AC in June if you want to come on over.
Okay. I will add, if any of the artists mentioned have done anything problematic in the last 22 years,
we're out.
I am fully unaware of any of the band members or singers that I have mentioned and their personal lives. So I am pre-apologizing for including any of them.
Yeah.
But I would absolutely, again, I don't know what any of these acts have been up to, but on the basis of pure music, I would go see, let's see, juvenile legal issues. Assaulting his barber, not great. Drug charges, not great. Failing to pay child support, not great. Purely on the merits of Juvenile's music, if he were on the Baja Blast stage, I would run over old people to see him.
So to bring this thing full circle, Dan.
Yeah.
There is a brother in Los Lonely Boys whose name is JoJo.
Oh, I like that.
On April 21st, 2022, with JoJo having allegedly changed his mind after 2 years, Los Lonely Boys announced they were joining The Who on some tour dates in Dallas, Houston.
Sorry, if they're good enough for The Who, the surviving members of The Who, it's pretty good.
They officially reunited a couple years ago. There you go.
All right.
Why don't we leave it there? We got a big part 2 coming up. I don't know if it can rival this one and the way we close things out, but we'll try. Please hit follow or subscribe if you made it this far.
That was technically college football talk, Ty. It was
technically college football talk.
Which large artists? Because there were some on there that were too big, right? They would not be playing like Alicia Keys is not playing the Baja Blast stage. She had,
No.
She had hits. Usher is not playing the Baja Blast stage. But that's college football talk, technically.
Technically speaking. We will leave it there. We've got a bunch more questions. Thank you to the Verballerhood for sending those in. Catch up with us on Thursday. In the meantime, as I said, hit follow, hit subscribe, write in, let us know your thoughts on any and all questions discussed here today. And we'll catch you all in a few minutes. All right, stay solid.
Peace.